Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am here with my buddy Shawn. We're here to talk about a very exciting topic, codependency. I'm just going to let you know that we have our own life experiences and perspectives, professional opinions on the term and concept, and we're going to be talking about, various perspectives and experiences about this. And so please feel free to comment. I will do my best to shape the conversation where it's as affirming as possible, but sometimes there is a sense of accountability that is involved as well. Just because there might be codependence in your life or your experiences, it does not mean that we do not one day take accountability to realize there are some things we can do, even if you have been wronged or harmed. There's certain things you can do to empower yourself. So thank you for being here, Shawn.
Thank you for having me again.
I love that you changed your setup a little bit. Your mic is like, has it always been there? I don't even remember. It was there last time.
Was it? I mean, this is the same microphone I used last time. I don't think I had it this low.
Oh, okay. I like the colors. I like that we're just like we're blending, we're doing things. Um, I was gonna call you by your Twitch name.
It's all good. Like I forget that that's not my real name sometimes, so I still answer by it, but I got you.
Okay, that's great. Oh, I love that. So let's just dive in and see where it takes us. What would you like to start saying about codependency?
Oh man. As I was sharing with you off camera, like I have been talking about it a lot at work recently. And one of the big takeaways that someone said during group was, wow, I didn't know that this stuff was. A lot of times people think it's codependency as like a drug addict problem or something in the mental health field when it's really a people problem.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in many different forms. Sometimes an individual can be codependent, not necessarily the one that's the abuser, but the person who me, has like a savior complex or feels as though that they have to protect this person. They have this burning desire to be there and help someone who's going through something when on paper it sounds nice to be uh very what's the word I'm looking for? It's nice to be giving, but when you start giving, like that whole analogy about the well, you start giving and you don't have anything to give. Sorry. When you Sorry
Trying
about
to talk
that.
about something serious here.
I
What
know.
are you
Thanks, Mom.
doing?
Thank you for calling me, Mom. Thanks.
Oh.
Uh but yeah, that threw me all the way off. So it's sometimes we feel as though that we have to give and give and give, and sometimes we can't if we don't have anything to give. There's nothing wrong with helping others, but you have to make sure you're good first. One of the
Mm.
analogies that I remember, the worksheet that we had that we were talking about, it said that in the event, like you're on a plane, like we was just talking about a plane,
Mm.
and the question asks if the plane's going down and the airbags and stuff come down, who should you put the mask on first? If you have a small child next to you, do you take care of the child first or do you put the mask on yourself? And a lot of people was like, oh, the kid. Naturally save the kid first.
Oh.
And no, you're actually supposed to put the oxygen on yourself first because if you don't, how can you help anyone else?
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah.
I'm selfish. I would do myself first. I got things to do. I need videos recorded. I can't. I can't. I want to open up my Twitch channel and finally stream. I'm
Well, I mean, you picked the right answer anyway then.
But
So it
that's
works
the
out.
thing, right? The perspective is if I take care of myself first, I'm selfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a big one because I don't want to be seen as selfish. I want to be seen as selfless. I want to be seen as giving and so self-sacrificing. That's the
Right.
big part. Like we always do things in extremes, right? In order for people to see a certain part of you, you give 150%,
Right.
because you want that recognition. Oy.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want it's something that is just kind of ingrained in us in society that like you're supposed to think of others first and you're a bad person if you don't. And while not to get too much into the whole psychology thing, and maybe we can talk about that another day, the ed, the ego, and the super ego. The reason why we have all this stuff in place is because naturally you have one part of you that just wants to kind of do the right thing all the time, and the other part of you is the hedonistic part, and it's like, well, it's kind of like cartoons, and a lot of times they usually just have the angel and the devil. They don't
Uh,
really talk about the third part, but the third part is very, very important because it makes sure that both sides are appeased.
mhm.
Sometimes it's okay to be selfish and to think and to take yourself first over someone else because, again, you can't give from something if you don't have anything. It's okay
Right.
to every once in a while, like I'm one of those individuals that'll give you the shirt off their back. But
Mhm.
if I don't have a shirt to give,
Right.
kind of can't
One
help
day
you.
you might run out and be like, oh shoot, I
Right,
gave them
right,
all
right, right,
away.
right. So yeah,
Mm,
it's one of those things that we definitely all have kind of went through to a degree, in one shape or form, and it's not something that is exclusive to the population I work with or the population you work with. It's something
mm.
that again is a human problem. We all kind of have experienced it one way or another.
That is so interesting. So, like, I love hearing your perspective from your world and your populations because, like, in my head, a big part of how I see codependence is caregivers and loved ones of military. So like
Mm,
so this is a structural systemic problem right here. I'm calling out the government. Like you don't take care of your vets when they come back at all.
at all.
Civilian life forgotten and families suffer because of it. So anyways, that's just my personal opinion, but I've experienced it too, so I've seen it. So like in the groups that I'm in, there's all these wives, partners, mostly women. So
Mhm.
their men come back, you know, from tour or whatever it is, service, and they're constantly talking about because they're dysregulated from war. They've seen all this stuff, and I don't blame them. Again, none of this is good or bad. It's just the reality of life experience and what's happening. So you're seeing all these guys come back, and
Mhm.
they've gone through, seen people die, amputated body parts blown up, and the atrocities of war. Right? We're doing things. We're doing bad things in different countries. Right? We're taking over
Right.
and stealing their stuff and
And never leave.
controlling and yeah, we're not leaving. We have the worst intentions for things. Anyways, that's my opinion. There's good reasons and bad reasons. Anyways, so like they come back, they are not well. And because they're not well, so trauma response is coming out. They're
Right.
redirecting all this trauma and pain and harming their wives, their spouses, their family members. And the codependency comes out of like, I need to save my combat vet. I need to be there, devote my life, no matter how much he abuses me, spews this stuff, like struggles in his own life because he sacrificed. So like now you feel like you have to give back because of the sacrifice that someone did for the
Right.
honor of our country and our safety. And so it gets more complicated. And that's how I see in general a big part of like some types of relationships where a lot of people who want to help and save and show care is like, I will, as a sign now, how devoted can I be to be with
Mhm.
someone who is struggling so much? If I love him enough, he will change and heal. And that's not the fact, like
Right.
your love can help, but it's not going to like turn everything around. That, that's
Right. Right.
that's in
Right.
fairy tales and in cartoons.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and I echo everything that you're saying as far as especially the military part. I've worked with a few veterans who ended up, coming to our program and everything and like trying to get them their entitlements. And once they have it, things kind of move a little better for them. But like
Mm-hmm.
trying to obtain it, it's a nightmare sometimes.
Yeah.
So I echo everything you're saying as far as like how the government does not look out for veterans.
Mm-mm.
Um, but yeah, that's a hard one, man. And people have a really hard time. And that was one of the questions that actually came up in group one time. Where do you draw the line between I'm shallow, I'm leaving because you have too much going on versus, you know, this is becoming abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And like I come across that as well where I work. I'll give you a scenario. Um, there was an individual I used to work with a couple of years ago, and he had a really, really bad alcohol problem. The program I was working at wasn't inpatient. We were medicated assisted treatment, so like we gave methadone, Suboxone, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, with him being on methadone, you can't take any other central nervous system suppressants, so like alcohol, benzodiazepines. that any of that stuff can interact with methadone and slow down your nervous system to the point where you stop breathing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So alcohol is a big no-no. Even though it's legal, you cannot drink while you're taking methadone and Suboxone. So this individual, we were trying to get him some help, find him somewhere inpatient because his drinking got so bad to the point we had to breathalyze him daily. And he got it down to a system where he actually would drink the night before. And at this job, I had to get there around like 5 a.m. And they stopped medicating people around like 12.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we closed at 1. Yeah. So uh by 12 o'clock, he would slowly stroll in and like the nurses are damn near shutting the pumps down and everything. And he would just stroll in and know that like the alcohol they drank the night before metabolized, so he wouldn't blow.
Mm.
But he got to the point we had the DTs and he would start shaking and stuff when he didn't have alcohol. So what he would do is he would quickly come in, get medicated, and then his fiance, I'm gonna use air quotes throughout this comment, it'll make sense. So his fiance would wait for him outside with a shorty. So that way he could drink and not, you know, have
Mm.
any of the adverse effects of alcohol withdrawal. This particular day, he didn't make it. He got to the nursing window and actually had a seizure.
Mm.
Yeah. So he didn't pass or anything like that, but like that was a wake up call because he bit off a quarter of his tongue.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And he actually came to me and was like, "Look, this is it. I have to change. I have to do something differently." So we all agreed. We had a team board meeting. We agreed that he, um, we would find him a place to go, and we actually did find somewhere to go. And he actually, had to wait like I think it was a week out for the bed to be available. And his fiance got in his ear and was talking to him, "Hey, you're gonna go to treatment. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do that. You're gonna get better without me, pretty much."
Oh,
And as a result, he he didn't pass away from that incident with the dosing window and everything, but he actually when they found him, he passed, and they found him in the inner city. Um, as a result, uh, and again, the whole fiance thing. Maybe a week or two later, she was engaged to someone else.
oh my God.
Yeah. So codependency a lot of times looks like that for me in my realm. It's a significant other not willing to go into treatment, or if they go into treatment, they got to go somewhere together, and it's like that. Like they feel like they're a hive mind and they can't make a decision without the other person.
That's a
And
good description. Yes.
yeah, so yeah, I mean it again, it affects everyone, but like more often than not, I see that kind of scenario playing out. One individual wants to get the help, the other
Mm.
individual's kind of indifferent, and or sometimes I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn. I know some programs, I know some programs like doing couples, but the big thing, especially with addiction, early on, we have this thing called post-acute withdrawal syndrome,
Mm.
and with post-acute withdrawal syndrome, 6 months to a year, those are the strongest cravings you're gonna have when you're trying to detox and get off of drugs and stuff. And in the early stages of trying to better yourself, they recommend that you don't even get into a relationship.
I love that.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah, and for good reason that they recommend that. But sometimes people are already in relationships, and um, you just gotta kind of stay the course, I guess. But a lot of times, at least in my experience, when individuals tried to come in as a couple in our program, which is one of the reasons why we don't do it anymore,
Mm.
um, one person gets fed up and leaves, and then the other person, it isn't too long after that they leave too. So codependency can take a lot of different forms.
What do you think is the reasoning or part of the aspect of why one person's leaving before the other? Why are they leaving?
I mean, it varies. Some people feel as though that some of the rules are because some places are co-ed.
Hmm.
Some places are co-ed and they allow the couples to live together. In our program, we actually have a women's house and men's house. And it's really no fraternizing. Like a few times I had to like I felt like a school teacher. I'm like, stop holding hands. Like I had to do stuff like that, but uh it varies. Sometimes it's that they feel like are adults and they should be able to share, the same living space. Um, or sometimes the person just isn't ready. They went in
Big
because
part.
the other person wanted to go in and they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go. But
Mhm.
they're going in all for all the wrong reasons.
I don't know where I want to take this. Hold on. Wait, brain branching, going different directions. Which one do I touch? Okay, so let's do family systems. Okay,
Okay.
let's do family systems. So what I thought about initially is like, so if you see someone who's codependent, or if you might be having codependent traits, going through your own thing, I want you to we're doing the reframe. Okay, so I'm
Okay.
thinking about inherited trauma. Let's say that you have had the parent who is either they're abusive in some way, or they're struggling coping with unresolved grief, addiction, something. A lot of Asian families, we don't talk about anything, so I have no
Mm-hmm.
freaking clue what anyone has, right? It's all a mystery. So I'm just gonna guess and throw stuff. Okay, so let's say that I inherited something. I know I did. So like I inherited something where I become
Me
codependent.
too.
This is all hypothetical. I'm not codependent, right? I'm just saying I am. Okay, and then let's say I find someone who's struggling because I used to hypothetically take care of an alcoholic parent or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay. And so since I'm used to that, that's my identity as child. My worth comes from that. I'm parentified. My sense of worth is like, I need to fix people. That's my role. I never learned to identify anything else. And then I start studying psychology and education to help people because I think that's my role in life. But it's
Right.
only an aspect, right? But family systems wise, let's say that just happened. Okay. And so
Got you. I'm winking. I'm
uh-uh.
winking.
So like I, I I internalize the identity. It's so familiar. It's in my genetics, right? It's in my DNA. It's my lived experience. It's so real. It's comforting too. That's the part that's so hard. This
Mhm.
becomes your comfortable truth, which is not the best truth, right? And so we repeat the pattern again and again, but then it becomes nuance now because
Right.
it's not as intense as your origin, family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
You start having so many types of relationships that it becomes a theme now, right?
Right.
So the theme comes out, and sometimes you feel like, now you see there's a pattern. And so, am I the problem here? Am I the one? So, this is not my words. I was actually watching another video or a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was watching another life coach, and she was like, maybe it's you allowing certain people in, right? I was like, oh, that's a good one. Let me write that down. So, so, so like it's the magnetism we have with certain people, but also we're attracting all these people all the time, but we don't notice it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're only noticing what we're used to, which is the codependency. It's like,
Right.
ooh, this boy is cute and he's struggling. I like that. So you misinterpret that as attraction. That's
Mm-hmm.
not attraction.
Right.
That's childhood trauma that needs to be healed and worked through. And so, but we don't know because we equated it in the past to love. Our
Mm-hmm.
relationship was based on caring for someone. It was based on watching someone struggle. And so there's a lot of unlearning to do there. And so it made me think of that. I was like, yes, all this stuff is related, and especially the addiction part, especially caring for a loved one. Yes, we can care for loved ones, but there's that boundary that we talked about, right? What does
Mm-hmm.
it look like? We don't even know if we grew up in this type of dynamic. It's a new language.
Right. You're absolutely right. And that was one thing that we kind of went over a lot in the past couple of days is like some of the individuals was like, wow, I didn't know that this was like a learned behavior. But it is.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely is. We learned so much from just like watching our parents. Um, I know we're sticking with the family, but I'm a drug counselor, so I'm gonna bring it back. Um,
Good.
I've witnessed that. Like I've witnessed generations coming to the clinic that I used to work at, where I seen the
Oh my
mom, the grandmom, and the baby, like all of them getting services because that was normal in their household.
Mm-hmm.
It was normal to see certain things and nobody questioned it, like how you were saying earlier. And, you go through life and you're just kind of wondering, well, why does this particular thing keep happening to me? And it's all unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Case in point, like you were talking about with dating. I don't think we have enough time to sit here and talk about my dating life, but my God, like I just after a while, like you really, like you said, you really can't blame anyone else because you're like, why do I keep this is a different face. This is a different face, but I keep running into the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not them, maybe it's something I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that like we do stuff and honestly, a lot of our communication is nonverbal anyway. So why is it far fetched to believe that like we're doing something? I don't know. We're looking for certain because we always look for patterns and stuff like that. That's why
Mm-hmm.
like you look in the sky, you can make faces and stuff. We're always looking for patterns. So like you run into someone and they're like, oh, well, that person's troubled. I like a project. This
Right?
person,
Ooh,
right,
complicated.
right. Oh, you have dad issues. Okay, all right. When are you free? Like that kind of thing. Like we do that without even realizing it. And a lot of times we want to point the finger at someone else, but like when you point your finger at someone, three fingers are pointing back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Like in the
yeah.
eye. Like
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean it's that kind of stuff that we all, like I said earlier before. And I think honestly, people in our field, the helping field, the helper field, I don't think you get into this field unless you have some kind of brush or experience with something.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we've all kind of, in our own way, been affected. And I think that a lot of times that's a stigma that, especially in the dating field for me, people think we got it all together.
Mhm.
And we don't. Day to day, I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing, but I make it work some kind of way.
Mhm.
But, there's the first problem is admitting, and I think I said this last time we were talking. Um, if we got chest pains or something's wrong with our arm or something like that, I right now, love you dearly, but if my arm started tingling or something like that and I felt like I was about to have a stroke, end of the meeting, I'm about to go to the hospital, have somebody take me. We don't have
Mhm.
that same kind of care urgency when it comes to our mental health or things, traumas and stuff that we've experienced growing up. So a lot of that stuff, like you were saying, as far as like early childhood and things that we go through and we witness and stuff, that shapes who we are as an adult.
Mhm.
A lot of times in my teachings, I use I'm not sure if you ever heard the song Daughters by John Mayer.
Yeah.
I love that song. And I use that a lot. And I'm like, what do you guys think? And he was like, oh, it's a okay song or whatever. But I'm like, okay, but like what did you hear when he was talking
Mm.
about what he was talking about? Um one of the lines in the song, because again, it's about dating and codependency. He's he met a girl that he loved and everything. He was like her feelings changed like a maze. And, after a while, he started to realize it didn't have nothing to do with him. It was her
Mm.
upbringing. It was things that, she experienced as a child as to why their dating life is the way it is.
Mm.
So, in so many words, like, this stuff not taking if it isn't addressed early on, it bleeds into other areas of your life.
Mhm. It does. And so I like disclaimers all the time for the things that I say because perspective is important and readiness for change, awareness, right? Um, we're not saying these things that people do to you are ever, okay, right? It's just that these are series of accumulated experiences and choices that other people make, and at the same time, you know, because they have harmed you or hurt you and you still want to save them or something or completely understand, there's a space for that. Compassion is important. I will always advocate for compassion. At the same time, throwing yourself under the bus for someone else because you feel like it'll help them, move on or like appreciate you finally, it's not the best decision. It's there's a space to grow and be accountable and be, I guess I would call like your grown up self, because I think a lot of people who are still suffering or struggling with codependency, we are children versions of ourselves.
Mhm,
We want our parents' approval. We want mommy, daddy, parent, grandparent, guardian to acknowledge us. Like, so we're stuck in that phase of like whatever early thing happened, we want that some type of closure and solution, right? And so a lot of people might not have the insight, a lot of people do. Like it's a little bit of mix of both when I talk to people about this stuff, because some people are like, I don't have mommy issues or daddy issues, or like, I'm not dating my dad. That's so weird. I'm like, you're not? But you see how similar, like, do you not? No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. It's like, if you don't have that insight, I'm not telling you. Like, I'm not going to be like, dragging you by the arm, and be like, look right here. This video of your life. This right here is you and your dad, right? So, no, it's not. But it really is,
Yeah.
but we're just putting that primary caregiver person as the placeholder. Literally, it could be anybody. It could be something significant that you're working on. And again, this is like I'm painting with a very broad paintbrush right here. I'm generalizing.
We
If
both
this
are,
is
yeah.
not true, great. Like please have your own voice and advocacy and be like, Boonie, you're totally wrong. This is not true. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I have my citations here. This is what has gone on with my life. You can dump your life story in the comments and tell me how wrong I am. So like, I support it. I encourage it. So like, when that happens though, there's a little bit of that resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're completely open and under the influence of like, oh, these people like, Boonie, I love your channel. You're completely right. That's exactly what happened to me. But I always want people to pause and be critical in your thinking. Do not agree with everything that we say. Do not. Please don't. Okay?
Yeah, you're
Challenge
absolutely
it.
right.
Look up more research, like question it. Like, and when you're ready to, because I know I'm right, when you're ready to believe certain aspects of the topic in general, come back to it in a year, 2 years. Like there could be some truth here. Like that's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I echo everything you're saying. I mean, like we as professionals have to remind ourselves that like we aren't above what we learn or um things that we might have gone or learned about in school. We're not above that. Like it still applies to us because we're all human. But you're absolutely right. Like it's not a generalized statement, any of the stuff we're saying. I tell anyone like there's paradigm shifts all the time. Like I mentioned one time before in the last video, Pluto was a planet when I was in elementary school, and
Mm,
it's not now, or it's a planetoid. I don't know what it is. Don't get me lying. But stuff changes. And I'm not in the business of like pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, but stuff changes. Do your own research. Um, ask questions. The greatest minds ever. We were talking about oh, I didn't mention that. Yeah, I'm gonna mention it later. But um the greatest minds ever, a lot of times they consider the what are they called? I can't I had a brain fart. Uh dang. Socrates. What was Socrates? Socrates was a
philosopher.
philosopher. There we go. I had a brain fart. The greatest minds of our times, the philosophers and stuff, they always question things. They didn't just actually say, "Okay, well, this is what it is for face value." They question things, and a lot of times when people would come to them, they would ask them questions like, "Hey, how do you know everything? Do you like why are you so smart?" And the philosophers a lot of times would shoot back and say, "Hey, I mean, the day I stop learning is the day I die."
Mm,
Um,
yep.
if I stop questioning everything, if I stop becoming a student of the world, then I truly am dumb. But the day I stop thinking is the day I die or asking questions. So there's nothing wrong with any of the stuff that we're talking about or sharing and stuff like that. Some of this stuff is our own personal experience. Um, we both have degrees verifying that we know what we're talking about, but at the same time, again, there's paradigm shifts. There's always new things. Just the other weekend, I had to complete some CEUs and continue education just to learn about different things and new drug trends and stuff. Like stuff changes. Just in the short period
Mm-hmm.
of time that I graduated school, so much has changed. So yeah, always ask questions and if something sounds weird, do your own research.
Yes. Like blindly following authority. We don't do that here. We're not doing that. And I'm not an authority. Please don't. Please don't
Me
put me on
neither.
a pedestal. I don't like it up here. I'm gonna climb back down every time people put me up. Like I don't want to be up here. It's weird and lonely up here.
Oh man, off camera you mentioned something about hubris.
Yeah.
And um I use this thing. Like I like using a lot of analogies in my teachings. Um, you're familiar with the story of Icarus, right?
Yes, please explain it again.
Okay. So Icarus and his dad were, I forgot his dad's name. Don't shoot me. But they were great inventors.
Uh-huh.
And they both ended up getting into some trouble and they got put on this island. And the prison was kind of like a cylinder and it went straight up. And the only way to
Oh.
get out was straight up. So being the great inventors that they were, they used whatever they could find to make wings.
Mm,
And it was like feathers and tar and some other stuff that they were able to smack together and make wings.
mm,
And Icarus's dad told Icarus, "Look, we're great inventors and everything, but we had to use what we had available, so these aren't the greatest materials. So when we get out of here, don't fly too close to the sun because wax, it'll melt, and don't fly too close to the water because your wings will stiffen up and you'll fall. Stay right in the
mm,
middle."
mm,
So they both, being the great inventors that they were able to escape the prison, and Icarus did the exact opposite of what his dad told him. And when he flew close to the sun, he became a pancake because his wings melted.
mm,
He was a very, very, very great inventor, along with his dad. But sometimes we get that sense of like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. I went to school for this kind of stuff. I'm projecting now. Um,
mm.
Sometimes we let our hubris, that excessive pride, get the better of us, and we don't sometimes look at ourselves and examine ourselves when this stuff again is a human condition. It's something that affects everyone. Doctors don't, they don't have, it's not like just because you're a doctor, you don't have ailments anymore. You don't get sick.
Mhm.
Your doctor has a doctor. Your therapist has a therapist. Like you can't cut your own hair, pretty much is what I'm trying to say.
But I do cut my own hair.
Well, you can, all right. I mean, I trim my own
Oh, pick
facial
something
hair.
else.
Oh, that was a bad one. All right. You can't be your own dentist, I guess. Let's
Okay,
go with
that's a good
that one.
one.
All right,
A
let's
good
go with
one.
that one.
Yeah,
And even if you could, wouldn't it be much more convenient to go to someone else?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, in my own personal experience, like going back to the whole codependency thing, I feel like we've all had our brushes with it in one shape or form or another,
Mm, mm,
and I can honestly say that I've been in those roles as well. Um, and sometimes, again, we have this sense of pride, this excessive hubris that we have, and we're like, we're an exception from the law. Like that stuff
mm.
doesn't apply to us. We should know
Yep,
better.
yep.
And no, we're human like everybody else. And it happens to us just like everybody else. Maybe not to the
Mhm.
same degree, but it
Right.
happens.
So I want to note a couple things, like the hubris thing again. Like I take I have a little bit of pride. I take pride in being a smart person. So when I was in a codependent relationship, I kept on thinking, I am too smart for this, right? It doesn't apply to me because I'm so fucking smart. And so like I dug myself in a really deep hole because if I'm smart enough, I can get
Easily.
out of this. I can get out of anything. I'm so smart, right? So and you could also replace that word smart with like I'm such a good person, I'm so caring, I'm so giving, a good person, right? This stuff wouldn't happen to me because I'm so good, right? And so we misinterpret what the value of these words mean when it comes to the specific situation and a dynamic. Like you can't control everything that happens because there's two people involved here.
Right.
And other people who enable and perpetuate, especially, there's a lot of things that happen here. People perpetuate dynamic because it's not just a two-person thing. Systemically, it's huge. Where a lot of
Hmm.
people who could change, it's too uncomfortable because other people have, what do you call it, stakes now. The stakes are high because other people are playing a role in this. Like, if this person who's codependent or struggling in some way starts to grow, everyone else who's affected by it, who feels superior in some way, needed, wanted, loved, has a role like, I'm saving this. I'm like, poor me, like,
Hmm.
I have a role in this dynamic. If they change, I lose a sense of my identity. It's like, what
Right.
do I do about it? Like, I can't lose that. And so they
Hmm.
might double down and be like, nope, I found some drugs. I know you were trying to get clean. That's the talk, right? That's how they talk. People who I found the
Yeah.
drugs in a bag.
Sometimes you would be surprised the stuff I hear. So
Oh, okay.
you're
As
not
you
far
can
off.
tell, I don't have never done drugs. I don't even know how. Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, I if I would try if I would have tried me neither. The closest I've ever tried anything would be alcohol. All my family members would like
Oh
stay in the
yeah,
books.
alcohol
You
for
don't
sure.
touch any of that kind of stuff. But I would probably light the wrong end of a cigarette. So don't feel bad. I don't know how to do any of that
I
drugs either.
pretended to smoke one time. I was 18. I pretended to smoke one cigarette. I said it. Peer pressure.
Oh man.
I'm a bad person.
I thought like it was cool how like people would smoke cigarettes, but like outside of that, I've never really
Yeah.
nah, it's never been my bag. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. Like
Mm.
I've been that person. I've been that person that was like, I'm so smart that I obviously can't fall for the same kind of trash everybody else does because I went to school for this kind of stuff. I have degrees saying that I know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yep, I kind of fell into that same loop. But the thing is that people kept asking when we were talking about this throughout the week, people kept asking, like, okay, all right, well, we know what codependent relationships are now. Like, how do you avoid them? And
Mm.
I was
Ooh,
like, well,
good question.
I was like, well, the best way to even address any of this stuff is to be cognizant that it's even happening.
Yes.
Like, you absolutely need to know and recognize this stuff. Like, I think that people can correct me if I'm wrong, because it's probably something that you probably face as well in your line of work. People think that going to therapists or counselors or any of that kind of stuff once is going to fix their entire life.
Mm-hmm. That
Just one session and
misperception. Yeah.
right, one session and I'm
Mm-hmm.
fixed. I don't have a drug problem ever again. No, I'm good. But like that's the farthest thing from the truth. And like the stuff that we talk about and things that we learn and different things like that in our sessions and stuff isn't meant to, for you never to have that thing happen again. It's teaching you that okay, when you identify these things and you're starting to see a pattern, because again, we look for patterns. That's how the human mind works. We look for patterns. If you're able to identify certain things and you're able to be like, okay, all right, I see myself sliding down this way, the quicker you can, repair it and get out of that situation so it doesn't become a problem again. So yeah, I mean, like this is something again. It's a human condition. You're not gonna get it right all the time, but if you are able to identify it quick enough, you can get yourself out of that situation so it doesn't become as bad as it was before.
Yes. Yes. I want to echo something because this is really important. The misperceptions of what therapy, helping, coaching, counseling is. So here's a very interesting thing. So some people go to therapy, they're like, my therapist didn't fix anything. They didn't fix anything. I'm like, I'm just that meme, like looking sideways, like, no. So for me, I encourage and please urge therapists. You need to tell people. So I barely tell people what to do, but like this is my thing. Therapists need to tell their clients what therapy actually is. You don't fix anything. Like it's way easier. I don't know why. It's way easier for people in a coaching relationship to be like, I'm your coach. If you're an
Mm,
athlete and I'm your coach, you actually play the sport and do the thing, right? Yes. My job is to shape your skills, see the patterns, name things. Is that mom again? It's mom
yeah,
again, right?
yeah, for
Okay, we'll
the
call her
eighth
later.
time.
Um, so it's like I offer the expertise or some knowledge that will make you better at playing sports ball, like whatever it is that you're
Sports
doing.
ball.
I am not an athletic person. I am a potato and I have a very soft body. I'm a very gummy person. I'm Gumby. Anyways, so I don't play sports. I barely walk. Like I actually have to practice touching grass every day. It's my thing. As that was too much information about me.
Nothing wrong
So
with that.
talking
I didn't
about
hear any of it.
coaching. I'm talking about coaching.
Right.
I'm conceptually explaining. Oh yeah, coaching versus therapy, right? So if you work with me as a coach, I'm actually pretty funny with my clients. So like anyway, so like when you go to therapy, please ask, what is your theory as a therapist? How does change happen? What is your role in my change process? Do you fix anything? Yes or no? What would you say if I asked you, like, why aren't you fixing my life? My problems, And so as a coach, it's way easier to be like, I'm telling you that these are some of the strategies that would work, which pick one, do one of them, be
Mhm.
accountable with me. I will text you, message you, you tell me if you did it or not. And if you didn't, I kind of wag my finger at you and be like, we talked about this a week earlier. You said you were going to do it, but you didn't, And so, like, there's this, like, playfulness and compassion at the same time. But that's about the relationship. Like, you have to believe in me that I believe you. One
Right.
day we'll get there, but at the same time, this misconception of what therapy is for me has always been like a big boggle of like, why? Why do therapists not explain the process? If you did that, the expectation would be there way in the beginning. So people would be number one accountable. You are accountable for your life. Like, this is me
Mhm.
talking as a coach. Like, if you're having a hard time, we already talked about this. Personality, psychology wise, it all comes back to personal accountability. Life is hard, things happen. At the same time, everyone has a struggle to overcome, hardships to endure. And like you said, the pattern, name the pattern. If you see the hole in the road, you're not going to keep on falling into it because you notice that every time I walk in the street, there's a hole in the road. After like 10 times of getting falling in the in the hole in the road, some light bulb goes off and you realize, I'm not going to fall in the hole in the road anymore. Like, you could either walk around it, or the better thing, pick a different road. That's
Right.
a way better choice. But
That's
if
an
you have the
excellent
strong
analogy.
relationship, right? Strong relationship with your helper, you will believe and have the strength to make that choice. Until then, it's all relationship. You have to have a relationship with your helper for them to, like, show you that change is possible. And that's a big job. If your
Yeah.
life has existed a certain way for X amount of years, having hope that anything else could happen is it's the biggest thing. And then when you have that hope, accountability is next. Like, it's big.
Absolutely. I mean, like I try to make it a point early on, like when I'm going through paperwork and we're doing the intake process. A lot of times I let them know that like we talked about the risk and rewards of treatment. And
Mm-hmm.
I let them know what's going on and how the process works and everything. And I try to reiterate it, but like a lot of times when people are coming in, they're not really they're there, but they're not there. So but I agree that you do need to actually sit down and let them know how all this stuff works because people have this again, this big misconception that you go to a therapist, a counselor, any of those people in the helping field, and they put a band-aid on it and it just goes away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's not how this works. I mean, just because and I had someone ask me one time, they were like, "I wish I could just wake up and be normal like you."
Oh,
And I had to first ask them, A, what's normal? And B, like just for me, like I said earlier, day to day, I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So normal isn't something that you just kind of do and like it's just fixed and you're good. Like to be normal requires you to do maintenance. You don't altogether like if someone were to say they were diagnosed with like cancer or something, you don't say I don't want the treatment at all because the whole point of getting treatment with cancer is to hopefully get whatever is going on to go into remission. Is it a 100% cure in some cases? No, but it doesn't mean you don't not do it because, like it's just something that isn't going to be fixed. The whole point of all this stuff is to make sure that you have a better quality of life, is what I'm trying to say. It's not
right.
meant to uh fix something because a lot of times the reason why you're here was something that took a lifetime to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
one session isn't going to fix it. That doesn't mean throw away hope. It's just that you have to be real with yourself and understand that this is a process and anything that you want to be good at, you practice. Using the
Yeah.
analogy that you had with the athletes and stuff. I don't know, LeBron James, anybody that you can think of. I picked him. He was the first person that came to mind. But uh he's as good as he is because he's not just playing basketball on the on season. He's practicing on the off season. He's
Mm-hmm.
doing different things. He's making sure that he's good because that's his bread and butter. That's his way of making money. So he has to make sure he's good whenever. If anybody threw a
Mm,
basketball to him, he could do whatever he needed to do right there and then because he's on his A game all the time. He's practicing, he's doing whatever he needs to do as an athlete, he's taking care of his body, he's eating right, all of these different things. And that's something that we a lot of times neglect. Like hopefully we can talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs eventually. Maybe please. Okay.
okay, since you
um
did that.
but we neglect the fact that like we have a bunch of, and that's why I love working with you and talking about this kind of stuff, because my way of doing things and helping people isn't the end all be all. Like if you have
Right.
substance abuse problems, more often than not there's some mental health concerns going on too. It's a holistic kind of thing. You don't go to a car shop and just say, I just want my tires fixed and the check engine light and all these other things are going on with it. You might have fixed the problem right there and then that your tires were balding, but like there's other stuff going on with the car. You have to address everything.
Right.
And sometimes that process is not going to get fixed in one session. Sorry.
No. It's hard because we don't always think about what the actual whole person looks like, you know? It's these things we
I
don't
agree.
see, which is mental health, spiritual wellness.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see those.
Right. That's not something that's tangible and you can kind of measure.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Like we forget that. We forget that like we were kind of talking about last time. Um Someone raised their hand in group one time and was like, why would poverty be a thing that could cause trauma and all these different things? Like little stuff that we overlook
Mm,
could really, like it's just something that like we kind of step over and overlook a lot of times that could really be a big component as to why somebody's going through the things that they're going through.
mm-hmm.
So again, like this stuff, all everything, I love these conversations because they all roll into each other.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is just so interestingly tightly knitted that like you can't really tell where one begins and one ends.
Yes. Which is why if you start anywhere, that's a good start. Start anywhere. If you, this is like initial parts of like your healing journey, I don't care where you start. Pick something easy. If you like aim big and you're someone with hubris in the beginning of your life like me and you decided to aim big and it takes years to undo something because you decided not to go small, don't do that. Like, this is again my warning for the babies out there. You have the rest of your life to do this. Don't be like me, aim too big. Don't start with the big traumas. Do something small. Um, so like I actually had a side note because when it comes to codependency and trauma, it's very interwoven to certain populations of people. And I want to talk about like disabled, chronically ill. Um, there have been moments in my life I've been so fatigued and in pain, and I have like severe back pain from two major car accidents, and I've had a concussion,
Oh,
and I've had
sorry.
like all these injuries. And because of like my genetics too, I'm trying to actually go through doctor stuff to figure out what's up. Because I have these two genes expressing symptoms similar to Parkinson's.
Oh
And
man.
so I I had feeling of validation though. So like this is just my tiny rant about the medical system not believing me because I'm too young and to just take a walk to exercise. But I've been complaining about this for 13 years, maybe more. And that's a long time to not be believed by doctors. And so because of that, it's degenerative and it's just gotten worse. And there's correlating other factors related to that. And so me not being able to be active because I said I'm a potato, right? Potato, right? Like, but I've always felt ashamed. I always felt like there's something wrong with me because I don't have enough energy in my step. I'm not like I used to be when I was in my 20s. And so I always felt like I wasn't trying hard enough. And so when it comes to that codependency that slowly chips away at you, or if you have trauma, there could be the genetic component of like neurochemistry and body stuff changes because of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all this stuff happens and then we don't even know what's, again, like you said, it's all so interwoven. No clue. You could have higher inflammation, you could have more pain in your body, but because people don't see it, like mental wellness and spiritual wellness, that inside physical stuff, if you don't have it named or like not able to access medical care, there could be some things that are missing, which is why I know you're going to be like, yes, I do the whole biopsychosocial thing too, where you make sure the medical stuff is identified, right?
Mhm,
Ahead of time.
mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
So just needed to say that because it's a big deal.
Absolutely, yeah. And my heart goes out to you. My mom recently, because I'm probably going to show her this later. I'm not out doing drugs or something like that. You keep calling. I'm actually doing something important, lady. So I'm going to show you this later. But um, she actually recently found out that she had what is it? I keep having brain farts. She found out that she has is it what is it? What is it? Oh God. Lupus. My mom recently was diagnosed with lupus, and it wasn't until she went to several doctors because she kept saying something was wrong
Mm-hmm.
that she actually found out what was going on. So my hat goes off to you, you woman. Like you, a lot of times they don't take you seriously. They don't, you know, naturally, you know how you feel in your own body. I
Mm-hmm.
just wish people listened more instead of and that's another topic we should talk about one day. Like going to the doctors is so interpersonal. They come in, you wait, you come at your appointment time, and then you're waiting like 45 minutes for them to even come in the room, and they don't even look at you, and then they read something off a sheet, and they're like, okay, see you next week, or whatever.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But that's something that we have to, medical. I'm terrified of that kind of stuff, and I'm right along with you. But yeah, like my heart goes out to you. That is really one of those things that like, you wish that you could have gotten on top of sooner, but because no one took you seriously, yeah. So
Yeah.
I understand.
I send
But
my love to your mom.
thank you. But yeah, like that's one of those things, man. Like where we again, like we were talking about that trust and mistrust with like people in those positions of power.
Mm-hmm.
And we sometimes like, well, should I even bother?
Right.
So
Yes.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what was I gonna say? It'll come back to me. But all of this stuff, again, thank you for having me. Like this, we have some really great conversations, and a lot of the stuff we talk about rolls right into each other. We even though we have our own professional tracks and they go in totally different directions or whatever, somewhere in the middle there's a nexus, and all of this stuff is connected. We always end up some kind of way. I know that like you were talking about earlier, like when asking the therapist, which is a very good point. I'm going to echo that and champion that. You guys out there listening, definitely ask questions. You don't just go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere and just, you know, oh, you're a doctor, I trust you. No, you do your research like with everything else. Like you're getting a car or a house, you don't just buy the first house you see, you do research. You ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we uh we need to remember that all of this stuff is so connected, and at the beginning of all of this stuff, it's usually our childhood. Now I know everybody has their own different way of thinking, and like, some people don't really focus on early childhood and stuff in certain circles, but there's merit to it. And there's really a lot of merit to it as to how we interact with the world around us. Because like you were saying about our inner child. Our inner child, we see a lot of different things, and like one of the things that comes to mind when when we talk about this is an individual that I was talking to, and um they were telling me some real heavy stuff, and I was like, wow, like how many people have you told this to? They're like, not many. And I'm like, well, do you think you're over it? Like, how do you just say that so matter of fact that you haven't talked to anyone about this? And she was just kind of like, it is what it is. And that's an attitude that a lot of people have, and it's very toxic. Um, Maybe one day we can talk about that as well, as far as like the family dynamics and stuff. But if again, like we were saying, with certain things being taught to us, if we don't unlearn it, We're going to think that that's how we're supposed to function. That's how you're supposed to go through life. This person doesn't love me unless they hit me. This
Mm,
person, uh, like you were mentioning earlier about Asian households and families and stuff like that. In the African American community, uh, how can I say this? Okay, so like a lot of times people are like, I want the relationship that grandma and grandpa had back in the day.
mm,
And it's like, do you though?
yeah.
Because the relationship that grandpa and grandma had back in the day, yeah, they stuck together, but grandpa had a whole nother family somewhere sometimes in some cases. And like she stayed out of convenience.
Mm,
Codependency has many faces, and sometimes it looks like that. It looks like staying with someone because uh they're a great provider, and they're not hitting me all the time. Stuff like that. Like we make fun of it, but like that's a reality. That's someone's reality.
mhm,
Like we joke half-heartedly about it, but like that's really someone's reality. Someone really out there is going through that. They think that like because all these other areas of my relationship is good. My basic, like we were talking about before, my basic needs are being met. I have a roof over my head. I have food in the refrigerator. I'm good. He just hits me sometimes.
mm,
That's problematic. Or on the flip side, uh, what would be the inverse of that? What would be the inverse of that? I'm trying to think. Because there was a scenario that we had where so like I'm really into like not only just reading stuff off the papers. If we have enough participants in group, well, like, do little scenarios and stuff like that. And one of the
nice.
scenarios that we had, I can't remember exactly how it went, but yeah, it'll come back to me. But like we definitely, even in my line of work, it might not necessarily be the same exact thing, but like I come across it a lot. Codependency is uh bad. Like I share it with you. And sometimes in some cases, if it's not necessarily the person who's the aggressor, sometimes you can be codependent and being that the caregiver provider role. And like I was sharing with you off camera, I had an individual share to me because I straight up asked him, I'm like, well, why do you continue to um why do you continue to help her with what's going on? Why do you continue to enable her with the particular, I'm trying to be vague.
Mhm.
with the particular
Yeah.
with this particular thing that I can't say. So um it's just kind of one of those things where I don't have any other way of saying it. So I just outright asked her, I'm like, why do you continue to enable her with this particular thing? And she looked me dead in my face and was like, well, a little bit of control is better than none.
Mm,
And for us as humans, it's scary for us not to have that feeling that we're in control. Like being in the car, for example. I've been driving for I don't know how long now, and being in the passenger seat sometimes is kind of scary. Even if, like with my friend, we're going the same way that I usually go when I'm driving. We're going the same speed, but I'm like, all right, look out, watch out, don't like I'm nervous because I'm not the one driving. But truth is, I probably drive the same way he does. But I'm worried because it's not I'm not in control. And
mhm,
yeah, like that really for some people, they feel like being that caregiver, that provider, I'm in control, I'm able to help. That power dynamic can also be toxic. So it's not
yes.
always necessarily the one that's out here beating the person or anything like that. It's the individuals that want to have, I don't know, everybody on puppet strings, the puppeteer. They want to, that can be also toxic as well.
Mhm. And I want to kind of jump off of that too, because everybody has a different intention when they come to participating in codependency. So it's like underlying, that's the word, underlying the codependency is trauma. Okay, so some type of trauma dynamic happens, your body, your psyche is dysregulated in some way, and you're seeking to repair an original core wounding, right? So that's how I'm interpreting it. I know there's like people writing and trying to pair codependency with trauma, and I do see it. And at the same time, um, the intention that we have with being the enabler. So like you could be enabling someone, but also codependent. Like you could be both in the dynamic, right? It can
Mm-hmm.
interchange, right? And so when you're participating in either role that you have in this dynamic, it's about your intention. Like, am I doing it because I can't be alone? Am I doing it because my self value is so low that I can't picture myself anybody wanting me? So I'll just stay with this. This is better than being alone, right? There's a lot of people who say that, and I get it. It's hard to be alone because when you're alone, you have to face your demons, you have to grow, you have to
Mm-hmm.
change. But if I'm in this dynamic that's familiar, I know this, it's the familiar hell, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so people choose that a lot. And then with the dynamic of like, so I will be honest and share that I used to enable someone in my past. I did it because I didn't want to work on myself. I did it because I wanted to be seen as like poor me. Look at Boonie. She's struggling so hard and trying to be the best, blah blah blah, in this relationship. Like she's just so sacrificing and so giving, right? And so I had to acknowledge that that's what I wanted from people. I wanted them to see that I am such a good person, and so like that's a terrible thing, right? Like I was shitty. Like I was bad, like in that way. So that was me in my shadow. Like I wanted to be seen a certain way, and I didn't help someone realize. So his is like something about. I guess we could wrap here too, like with our final thoughts or jump a little bit more. Coming into your own power. When you enable someone, you take away their power. You
Mm-hmm.
think that they're not strong enough to fight for themselves. You think that you know better. Control, right? I'm
Right.
going to control someone's choices in their life because they're not strong enough to make choices. They're not strong enough to fail. They're not strong enough to like have struggle because I know how weak they are. So I will take the burden. Let me fix them. I will take the burden because I can take it. So
Right.
like it's this shifting of like what it means to help someone and really to give people space to empower them, baby steps to fail safely. That's the whole point. If you completely let go and abandon them, then no, they're not going to do well. But if
Mm-hmm.
you truly believe in someone's ability to grow, you can baby step. Like it's just like a transition. You're not letting go completely because it's scary, right? If you do let go completely, it's like cold turkey with drugs. We don't do that. We're not
Right.
doing that. We're slowly transitioning just to get used to a little bit of change. And that's, I think, the more affirming, healthy way to do it. It's not the best choices, like in an ideal world, different circumstances, different choices, but we live in reality here. And if someone's having really terrible, dangerous life decisions and coping skills, and you want to still be there for someone, then you're going to be there gradually, slowly letting them know that they do have power. But a lot of people feel so powerless that they decide to give up their power and let someone else tell them what to do. Like,
Right.
I trust you, you love me, right? So tell me what to do with my life?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything you're saying. Not to be too long, and I'm going to keep this real brief, but I've also been in that kind of position. I felt like, and honestly, it wasn't until like a friend of mine kind of brought it to my, and for those out there watching, for people who are not malicious, but like they're brutally honest and they're able to really just like tell you what it is, hold on to those people.
Mm-hmm.
My one of my good friends was straight up like, I was telling him what was going on with my relationship, and he was like, "Wow, like you let her do that? Like you wouldn't let nobody do that before?" He was like, "You scared to be alone or something?" Just like that. And it kind of caught me off guard at first. Like, the hell you mean? Am I no? But he wasn't lying. Like we tolerate certain things and we do certain things because of that fear of sometimes speaking for myself, what if this is the best I can do? What if this is who I'm supposed to be for? Like I was saying earlier, where do you draw the line between being like, okay, I'm an asshole if I leave this person alone because they got too
Mm-hmm.
much going on,
Right.
versus um I'm a good person if I stick by this person. I'm a ride or die for this person. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a fine line. You really can't tell what to do and stuff. But from my own personal experience, I've learned that like when you start kind of again, because all of this stuff, I haven't in my life, I haven't talked so much about self-esteem and stuff like that more than I have ever now doing what I do as a counselor.
Mm,
Um, when you start valuing, like you said, like the other person, you start valuing their ability to make sound adult decisions and stuff, and you start valuing yourself, being like, I don't deserve this kind of treatment and stuff like that. Things work out for you. That's where it kind of begins. Like that's where you find that area where, okay, well, maybe this is toxic. When you start to value yourself and you start to value that, okay, this person's an adult and they were able to survive how many years before they knew I existed. So
mm,
they must be doing something right.
right. Give people more credit.
Right.
Hmm.
So yeah, I champion everything you're saying. Like we definitely my closing regards would be that like even though we know what we're talking about, that's why we have the degrees that we do, we're not an exception to the rule. All of this stuff affects everybody because it's a human condition. All of this stuff, um, initially codependency kind of started off as like a relationship addiction,
Mm,
kind of like that's how all this stuff stemmed. Being like dependent on interactions, not always romantic relationships, but having somebody around, feeling like you have a void or there's a vacuum if you don't have someone. That's all the stuff stemmed. And the best surefire way that we can fight this stuff is starting with yourself, working on your self esteem, understanding your value, just how you value this person that you are putting on this pedestal. You matter, your feelings matter just as much as theirs. Um, we have to remember that like we're not an exception from a rule. Anybody can fall trapped to this. And the best remedy is to sometimes call yourself on your own bullshit. Like
hmm.
being able to identify that like I'm not no different than somebody and then I'm helping. I have some of the same things too. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't think you get into this field unless there is something a little wrong with you, like myself. So yeah, as always, great discussions, great topics. I always enjoy when you invite me to these things because they're always fun. And it's just cool to see that there is, again, some kind of nexus. Even though you're primarily with the mental health and I'm more so over here with the drugs, there is a nexus. There is a
Mm,
center point where all of this stuff meets. And we're able to be like, oh, dang, you go through the same stuff.
mm, mm,
So I love
mm.
these conversations.
Yes, me too. And since we talked about a mental health thing, I will recommend always please seek additional support with a professional in your area. I will link mental health therapist directories, hotlines, and domestic violence shelters who will have usually a social worker who is trained in offering guidance and support on the cycle of abuse. And they do offer trainings as well. So there's always something. It's sometimes like this is the point of the whole channel. Like there's resources, but sometimes we don't know what's out there. And that's why these conversations are so important.
Absolutely. And on top of what you're saying as far as like help that they can seek for, I mean, look for it and as far as like trying to find different people to talk to or even where to start. It was beautiful what you said earlier about starting somewhere. I remember one time this guy told me it was actually a coworker of mine. He he had a history with alcoholism. And he said that like he did everything. He did 12 step and everything. And he said, I hated it, Shawn. I hated going to 12 step. I hated all that. But he speaks really highly of it. So I was like, what the hell? Like you're contradicting yourself. You said you hate it, but like at the same time, like how did that work? How did you keep going? And he was like, they had some damn good coffee. Like whatever it is, cling to that. Like if it's gonna have you come back, cling to that. Like if it's just a small cup of coffee, cling to it.
Mhm.
And also just know that for those out there in TV land, um there are services that also if let's say you're in crisis. I know it varies from state to state, but here in Maryland we have the mobile crisis units
Nice.
and they actually will come to you. I'll reach out to you and I can give you some more information about that. But SAMHSA, like I was mentioning to you off camera, is my go-to. SAMHSA, they are the go-to when it comes to this kind of stuff. They have search engines that go by state. All you have to do is put in your zip code, and it
Mhm.
can give you more exact information about what's available in your area. And like I mentioned before, these services again, are great, but if sometimes people need immediate help. And the great thing about crisis, the mobile crisis units is that they'll come to you. So you guys are never alone. If you ever need help, there are people out there willing to listen to you. And it just starts with just, in my coworker's case, a cup of coffee. So you got to start somewhere. So
Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you're taking care, and I'll see you in the next video.
you guys.